welcome to the Television History Workshop. Carolyn Kellogg here with Gordon Bubolz, who, as you probably know already, is a community leader, prominent businessman in the Fox Valley, state senator, proud papa, philanthropist. It's hard to know where to start with you, Mr. Bubolz. We have one standard question, though, I'll start with for the kind of thing that we use for oral histories, and that's where and when were you born?
I was born September 10th, 1905 in the town of Cicero, Outagamie County. We had a 240-acre farm place out there, and I had 6 brothers and 6 sisters, so we had quite a sizable family. We all had to do a lot of work, of course.
Were you near the end or the middle, or where did you come in the family?
I was a third from the end. I had 2 sisters younger than I, Mrs. Frank Jesse and Mrs. Brumman and Apple and Gertrude, her name is.
And did you have any particular chores or projects that your end of the family was assigned?
Yeah, I sure did. I was interested in poultry farming, and we had through my interest and efforts, we had a 200-foot long poultry building and about 4,000 chickens and 20 different varieties and about 5 varieties of geese and ducks. And I would exhibit them at the county fairs, get a lot of blue and red ribbons, and this was my interest on the farm. I took care of the poultry. We got many, many dozens of eggs every day.
How did you collect them? Did you have any kind of mechanized help, or was it all handwork?
It was all handwork at that time, yes.
Well, that must
big
have
baskets.
kept you busy.
Mm-hmm. It did.
Did you have a regular routine with fitting school in there too somehow?
Yes, we were fortunate to have a state-graded school about a mile from our home in the town of Cicero. And I completed the 8 grades there, and then we had a parochial school, 2-year program, right in the community.
Did you bus in, or how did you get into
No, we
town?
walked every day.
Ah.
Except when the weather was real bad. Then I'd take a bobsled in the wintertime.
That sounds like fun.
Well, it was fun.
What happens, though, if you bobsled downhill one way? How do you get back? Do you have to drag the thing with you then?
Yes, we had a drag. We didn't have any mechanical devices to pull them up.
Does that involve packed lunch, too, then?
Yes. That was not a difficult matter. The mother would always fix us some lunches.
No, I was kind of thinking, with so many children in the family, did your mom really have time for each of you, or did you kind of have an older sister or brother who helped out with the younger kids?
Well, that was pretty much the mother and dad would be in general charge of the family, and we had respect for them. There wasn't any discipline problems, and if there were, why, they were promptly taken care of.
Did you have big Christmas celebrations, big family celebrations?
That was always the big event of the year, the Christmas celebration, and of course we believed in Santa Claus until we were about 10 or 11, and it was a very exciting time of the year.
What did Santa do at your house? I know there are different traditions for how Santa attacks the household at Christmas.
Well, he came in secret. In other words, we didn't see Santa, but we generally were asked to either be away or go to bed, and then at a certain time, why Santa had been there and delivered all the gifts, and we'd see them under the tree. Santa had arrived, and he had also left us good Christmas greetings and gifts.
It sounds like you opened presents on Christmas morning then, is that right?
No, we opened Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve?
We go to church services. We have Christmas program at the church, and then we come back and open them then.
I see. So Santa sneaked in probably while you were at church.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
That happened in my mother's family, too. I think Santa sneaked out of church, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, he knew just when we were going to be away.
We had a number of people in the community that had other favorite celebrations or favorite times of year. Was there any other special time for the Bubolz family that was kind of a regular event?
Well, that was the principal event, but of course Easter was always a great time too. The families would get together and enjoy their celebrations, their food, and their fellowship and friendship.
Has your family kept in touch over the years?
Pretty much, yes.
What's everybody doing these days?
Well, of course, I have one sister in the South, Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Al Smith, incidentally, but it wasn't that Al Smith, it was governor of New York. But and then Mrs. Drummond and Mrs. Jessie.
They're in town.
Members of my family, did you mean?
Yes.
Yes, well, Alan is president of Homeco Life Insurance Company. He's the oldest son, and John is president of Home Mutual Insurance Company, the parent company. And our son Jerry is a minister in Superior, Wisconsin, a Lutheran pastor. And our daughter Millie, I call her my favorite daughter, she's our only daughter. And she's an attorney at Hartford, Connecticut. She has two daughters, and her husband is an actuary. And he's the son of the former president of Aid Association for Lutherans in Appleton, Wally Rugland. And so we have 8 granddaughters and 1 grandson. And of course you couldn't imagine what we call the grandson, what name we gave him.
What's that?
Naturally be Gordy, you know.
Uh-huh.
I'm Gordon, and we have a son, Gordon, and he has a son now, Gordy, we call him, so 3rd generation.
Well, that's pretty great. Do you have, do you still get together with your sisters when you can?
Yes, we do. Yes, we have reunions occasionally, maybe once a year or once every couple of years.
Well, it sounds like family life has been an important thing to you over the years, and I know from things that you've written and said over the years that it seems like that there's always been a strong family base for you to operate from.
Yes, my brother George, who was, he's 4 years older than I, he was a clergyman, a minister, and a good writer. He does a lot of writing still for national magazines, but he wrote a family history called Father Julius and Mother Amelia. My mother's name was Amelia. And incidentally, my wife's name is Amelia. That was just a coincidence.
Your daughter's name is Amelia?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
and a granddaughter too.
Uh-huh.
And so the name Amelia has been a kind of a popular name in our family. But my brother George, and he's in Lansing, Michigan, has written this book, and that has preserved a lot of our family traditions and heritage and what the parents believed, and even one of my mother's favorite prayers.
Do you remember it?
Well, it's a whole page, you know. It covered the subject pretty well, but the basic principles of the faith and what we believed, and the thanks that we gave to our Lord and Creator for all the blessings of the good life.
Now, you have been very successful in the insurance business over the years, but how on earth did you get from poultry to insurance?
Well, my father organized 2 companies, a farm windstorm insurance company and a town mutual fire insurance company. And the reason he organized a windstorm insurance company, there was a serious tornado a few years before, 1900, which destroyed homes and injured some people, and they had no insurance. And the neighbors, my father was town clerk and he was school clerk, and justice of the peace, a kind of a community person. And so the people said, Mr. Bubolz, you'll have to do something that we will have some kind of protection. If this ever happens again, we'll all be seriously affected, and we hope you can figure out some way that we'll have some protection if this ever occurs again. So he said, okay, I'll study the laws, and he did. And a few months later, he called the meeting. There were 135 farmers and neighbors came. They were all pioneer people. That was around 1900. It was in 1900. And so they organized the Mutual Windstorm Insurance Company, and he wanted to make sure that the name said it all, so they wouldn't have to do too much advertising. He called it the Farmers Home Mutual Hail, Tornado, Cyclone, and Hurricane Insurance Company of Seymour, Wisconsin. And so he founded that company and also had a town mutual fire insurance company. Then when I became 21, you had to be 21 in order to order to sign any legal documents and make any important decisions. And so then he said, "Gordon, you're 21 now," and he said, here's a box of cigars. You can have a cigar and a bottle of beer," and that was an important day. Well, then he named me assistant secretary at that time of the insurance company that I told you had this long name. And a couple of years after I was named assistant secretary, I thought I would make a proposal to reduce the size of the name, and I recommended they call it the Home Mutual Hale Tornado Insurance Company. If I had struck the name as Hale Tornado, they would not have approved it. So they approved that, and a couple of years later I said, now let's reduce the name some more. It'll be more convenient, more modern. And so the name then was changed to Home Mutual Insurance Company, and it was about 1932, and it's had that name ever since, and this is our 84th year. And the Home Mutual, of course, became the founder of a couple other companies, Homeco Life and Homestead Mutual Fire, which later on then merged with the Home Mutual Insurance Company. I founded the Home Mutual Casualty Company. At that time, the property insurance had to be separate from casualty because automobile insurance was considered hazardous. Accidents ran into a lot of money. So I founded the Home Mutual Casualty Company, and that grew very rapidly. In 10 years, it was many times larger than the parent company. Then in 1955, we merged the Home Mutual Casualty Company with the parent company because the parent company had the oldest charter, founded in 1900, you see.
Sure. Great tradition.
And so we operate in 7 Midwest states. We could go national, but we've been growing so rapidly that we are satisfied to just limit it to these Midwest states for the time being.
Were you friendly rivals or unfriendly rivals or whatever of the Aid Association? Both companies started about the same time.
The founder of the Aid Association, one of the principal founders, was Gottlob Siegler, and his father and my father were very great friends. And there's never been any competition between their company and ours. We founded our life company in 1966, so we're quite a new life company, been growing very nicely. And
so you were in different departments of insurance at the beginning and grew in different directions.
yes.
There's plenty of room now. Apparently there are at least, what, 4 or 5 home offices here and lots of business for everyone. The companies seem to have addressed a real need, not only in the
Yes, the state and the country has been growing, and there's just a lot of new business for all the companies.
Do you find that now that you're not coming to the office every day, that you have time for other interests, or is insurance still kind of in the back of your mind?
Well, I have an overview interest of the insurance, naturally, having founded a couple of the companies, and I've been active as president and general manager for 46 years, and you naturally continue your interest as long as your health is good. But I've, of course, continuing my work with natural areas preservation, preserving the beautiful wilderness areas. And this has been one of our principal company efforts. The company should, and a business enterprise should not only devote its efforts to being successful in its particular business or enterprise, but should also devote some time to that will be a benefit to the people in the area communities. And so what we have done is to devote our time and effort and some resources to helping acquire and save beautiful wilderness areas that would be available for the use of not only the present but future generations. And of course the earth has only about 57 million square miles of land and 140 million square miles of water. And with the population increasing, about 5 billion people, we need to preserve the beautiful wilderness areas while they still can be saved.
When did you get the idea for Gordon Bubolz Nature Center?
Well, the center swamp was the basis of that center for many years, and many people knew that Center Swamp was a beautiful wildlife area, a wilderness area, and should be saved. And so this was about in the early 1970s that I became interested, and I said, we got to stop talking, we must do something about it. So I told the Board of Directors of Natural Areas Preservation, which is a nonprofit tax-exempt organization to save natural areas, that the time had come to acquire this land, and it was available. The former owners wanted to sell and get out because they used it for vegetable farming to produce vegetable crops, and it was flooded out four times out of 5. And so they were willing to sell it, and we were interested in buying it, and so that was our first acquisition. Then 488 acres. Later on we got 100 or so more acres. It's presently 657 acres. And at that time I recommended to the insurance company's board of directors that my father was a great lover of the wonders of land and nature, and that as a recognition to his work in conservation, that they should appropriate the money to buy the 488 acres, and that was the start of the Gordon Bubolz Nature Preserve, and they did appropriate the money to acquire that, and that was the beginning, and later on we acquired some additional lands.
You've been kind of keeping an eye on activities out there. I understand you drop in from time to time.
Yes, I do, and I love looking forward to the meetings. We have about 3 or 4 board meetings a year to review the progress in operations, and the important thing is to have good trained naturalists, and we have 2 naturalists out there full-time, and then a half-time naturalist, and many volunteers. People in our area communities just love to work with us to not only to help save the natural beauty and to maintain it, but also to learn about the wonders of nature and to be teachers of it to the school children and to be guides and this kind of thing. Our area schools have, about 60 area schools have been using the nature preserve, the Gordon Bubolz Nature Preserve. And it's interesting how it got the name. At one of the meetings, the board of directors said, we want you to step aside, we're going to conduct a meeting. I was chairman, of course, of Natural Areas Preservation. And they said, we have an important order of business. And I said, well, okay, if that's your desire, you are in control. And then somebody made the motion that they name this Center Swamp area as the Gordon Bubolz Nature Preserve to recognize some of the things I'd done to preserve not only that area but other natural areas, and that then became the name.
And it seems appropriate.
Well, it was quite a surprise, but that means we'll have to continue our great interest in the wonders of preserving the beauties of nature.
Isn't that nice, though, when somebody finally catches up with you and recognizes something that you're really interested in? You've been involved in politics, too. How did you have time for that? And you wound up in the state senate, I believe.
Yes, well, my father, of course, was a town officer, and his belief was that one should not only devote one's full time to furthering one's own economic and business interests, but should also work for the good of the community. The progress of an enterprise, he said, reflects the modern progress of a community, and so that's been a way of life with our family and my parents, and I thought it was my time and duty to offer my services to the state legislature, people of Wisconsin, through the state legislature. At that time I'd been a graduate of the Wharton School of Commerce and Finance. I felt that I probably should run for the state senate. And I did run, and that was in 1944, and I had 2 opponents. I was elected to the state senate. I served for 9 years and had 3 more years to go, but our company grew so rapidly that I just finally decided I couldn't do both anymore, and I had to make a decision. I hated to leave the Senate. I loved the work of being a part of the effort to, well, for instance, modernize our educational program. At one time we had more than 2,000 small school districts, and the time had come where the small schools could no longer give the modern education that the people of a new era deserved. And so the former Justice of the Supreme Court, he was in the Assembly at the time, Justice Grover Broadfoot, and he was from Mondovi area, introduced a bill to consolidate, provide consolidation of schools, and we now have about 380 school districts compared with the 2,000, a much more modern educational program.
No more bobsledding either.
Yeah, right. And of course, that was a very controversial subject because a lot of the communities didn't want to give up their local schools, you know, the smaller schools. And I'd say about 40 to 50% of the assemblymen who voted for it were defeated, but they voted their conviction and it was the right decision.
Is this how areas like, well, Black Creek, for example, now sends kids to high school in Seymour? Is that one of the consolidations?
Yes, that's right. That's an example. And they have a good educational program there.
Who else were you working with in the State Senate? Do you remember some people that you particularly liked, didn't like, or whatever?
Well, I didn't think there was any that I did like because in the State Senate and in the legislature, you all are entitled to your views, and then you argue the pros and cons, and it then, whatever the decision is, becomes the policy of the state, determined by the elected representatives. I was very impressed with the people that were in the Senate and in the legislature. At that time, the salary was only $100 a month when I was elected. And we got mileage to Madison when the session began, and mileage in return, 5 cents a mile. So that was about $10 for a round trip, 100 miles to Madison. And then the next session, you can never, the elected people cannot increase their own salaries. It had to be approved by the people at that time, at least. And so then the salary was increased to $200 a month. We had to pay our own expenses, however, while we were in Madison Hotel and meals.
How did that work? You went down for a time, a week or a month, or how long was it at a time?
About 5 to 6 months session, and then you wouldn't meet again for another 2 years. However, if there was a special session, then you would go back for whatever need there was.
Did you come back at all on weekends to see the family?
Oh yes, leave on Monday morning early and come back on Friday noon.
I remember your wife saying that she felt like the first liberated woman when you got involved in the State Senate, because all of a sudden she was on her own during the week.
That's right, yes. It was quite a sacrifice on her part, but when you look back, why, it was worthwhile.
What were some of the other issues you got involved in? You said you and Mr. Broadfoot worked on education.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting ones. And then, of course, it's interesting how I wasn't looking for a job in the area of promoting improvements in conservation in the state legislature, but the State Senate chose me to represent it, to be its representative on the Natural Resources Committee of State Agencies to do what? To consolidate the efforts of many agencies in the area of conservation. During the years, the legislature enacted this and that kind of proposal to give this or that agency authority to deal with conservation matters. And then the decision was made to consolidate that, and the Senate named me to be its representative on the Consolidation Committee. And as a result of that effort, the Conservation Commission and some of the other agencies that had conservation function, like pollution, was the State Board of Health, and you had an engineering department, did planning, and you had a state planning department, and you had a port authority division. You had many agencies that were involved with conservation planning. And so that was then the initial effort to formulate a more unified effort, coordinate a plan of conservation, which was great, and eventually became the Department of Natural Resources. It didn't all occur, the Department of Natural Resources didn't all occur during my term in the Senate, but that was the beginning of it. We started working on it at that time, and later on became a reality.
You, about in that period, about 1948, did something special to celebrate the state centennial, involving some of the nicer people around the Appleton area, Lillian Mackesy, Ken Sager, Walter Brummond. Do you remember that project?
Yes, the county board named me to be the chairman of the Outagamie County Centennial. And then I, of course, named quite a number of people to serve on the committee. Lillian Mackesy was one of the good writers who helped organize the writing of what we decided should become the Land of the Fox, a historical heritage book. And that has been printed. And we felt that the committee that we shouldn't only celebrate, have all kinds of activities and festivities and have a good time, but we should preserve the cultural heritage of the county. And that was done in publication of Land of the Fox. And I'm glad to see that now there's a continuation of that effort through the Fox Cities Heritage Book. Is that the name of the?
That's a good question. I think so. The Fox Heritage?
Yeah, the Fox Heritage. And that was presented to a group of community people yesterday. And
remarkably enough, right at your building, Home Mutuals.
Yes, I was glad to be there and to see this occur. It was a milestone accomplishment.
Well, it's been your encouragement and that of some of the other business leaders in the community that has made this kind of thing possible, and certainly the historians appreciate the opportunity to work on it and also to benefit from it over the years.
One of the things that I was really so thrilled about in the legislature was the enactment of the ORAP program. That was later in my senatorial term. And the ORAP, that stands for O is outdoor, R is recreation, A is acquisition, and P is preservation. And they provided or authorized the securing of $50 million of money, funds, to save some of these wilderness areas. That was the beginning of a great preservation program. The state now has 49 state parks and 3 recreation areas that were former government military areas, the Bong near Racine and the Woods Haven near Milwaukee, and the Hoffman over near Menominee. And those are recreation areas. Then there are many hunting and fishing river areas for fishing. They're not for camping. The parks may be used for camping, but the hunting and fishing areas are for just those purposes.
Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I certainly think I can speak for the community in saying please stick around and please continue your interests in education and natural preservation, and we certainly appreciate all the things that you're doing for the community.
What's been so thrilling about it was the great interest shown and the cooperation given by the people of the area communities, and without that it wouldn't have been possible.
Well, it takes good leadership, too. Thank you. Mr. Gordon Bubolz on the Television History Workshop. Thanks for watching.